Covering the Matrice 300RTK and Zenmuse H20 series today, going to do a high-level overview of capabilities and features. Subsequent videos will take a dive in to how to use the features, DJI Pilot app, more finite details. But this video will just keep it a little bit higher level. Quick timeline here on DJI Enterprise products, the Matrice 300 and the H20. DJI Enterprise's newest flagship drone and payload, announced here in 2020. You can see some of the preceding products, the Matrice 100, Matrice 600, 200 V1 and V2, some of the various payloads such as the XT series and the Z30. Some drones with more specialized focus like the Phantom 4 RTK and the P4 multispectral. And then here in 2020, the recent announcement of the P1 and the L1, which will be available for purchase next year. But today's focus, the Matrice 300 and H20 series, you can see the drone here, and one of the first things you may see is the props are facing down. So one of the benefits, as we'll cover here, is the obstacle avoidance system on the drone itself is on top of the aircraft. So you can see it going around basically top ring here. So with the props being underslung under the motors, that is beneficial. So they're staying out of the sensor's way there. Our RTK modules are also mounted on the back legs, so don't need to be pulling that out of the body and attaching it as an additional step for setup there. And then some other items to point out here as well. You can see the FPV camera built into the drone. Our sensors as well, as I just talked about. We have vision and time of flight sensors on each side of the aircraft, 2 on each side. And on the bottom right here, you can see the Zenmuse H20 series, which we'll be covering today, the H20 on the left and the H20T, which adds a thermal camera, thus the T on the right. So first off, I'm talking about superior performance of the system. Total flight time, looking at 55 minutes, and then the system also includes hot swappable batteries. So compared to the max flight time of your Matrice 210 RTK V2, which was 33 minutes, certainly additional flight time has been added here. And looking at total flight time, that's just saying if you put the drone up without a payload and flew it down to 0%, it would fly for 55 minutes in ideal conditions. When we move over to effective flight time, where we're talking about mounting a payload such as the H20T, and also landing with some battery life in reserve as is best practice, for example, 7 minutes of battery life here in this situation, we're looking at 36 minutes of flight time for the Matrice 300 RTK and H20T, compared to a flight time of 15 minutes for the M210 RTK V2 with an XT2 and Z30. So more than double the flight time there for really expanded capabilities with the H20T payload versus an XT2 and Z30 combo. Fast charging battery station, so all-in-one solution for charging, storage, and upgrades. So you can put 8 TB60 batteries and 4 WB37 batteries in there. Obviously, the WB37 batteries used for the Crystal Sky don't need to be upgraded, but the TB60 batteries used for the aircraft do. So you're able to connect the remote controller to this battery station, and by connecting that remote controller to the internet, updating all 8 batteries that are in the battery station in one go. You can charge 2 TB60 batteries to full capacity within 60 minutes. The charging station does charge 2 TB60 batteries and 1 WB37 battery at the same time. 70 minutes on that charge time for 110 volt input there, and that's what it would be here in the US where I'm located. And it's over 2 times faster compared to TB55 charging with the preceding Matrice 200 series. So this is just comparing it to the predecessor here. You cannot use any other type of battery with the Matrice 300 RTK, but just kind of comparing the preceding model here, it took over 2 times the amount of time to charge batteries for the Matrice 200 series versus with the battery charging station. The battery charging station is also the sole solution for charging TB60 batteries. Just another FAQ often hear. On the transmission side of things, 9.32 mile max transmission range compared to 4.97 miles with the Matrice 200 V2, and that's FCC there once again here in US. 1080p HD image transmission and triple video channel support. So you can have 2 video channels going to each remote controller and 3 in total. So for example, if you had the XT2 and the Z30 on the drone, and you also have the built-in FPV camera, you could have controller 1 with the FPV camera on the XT2 and controller 2 with the XT2 and the Z30. Maybe they're controlling the gimbals and working the sensors there. Also, if you just have the H20T on there with the FPV camera, both RCs could have both of those video feeds, just 3 max between the 2 controllers. Speaking a little bit more about the Smart Controller Enterprise, has a high brightness built-in touchscreen, 5.5 inches diagonally, 1080p, brightness up to 1000 candela per meter squared, which is more than double most iPads. Internal battery for the remote controller that you can charge, and then it has a swappable WB37 battery port on the back. So between the internal battery and the WB37 battery, that's combined 4.5 hours of battery life, and then you can continuously hot swap the WB37 battery, assuming you have internal battery charge there. So good solution to keep working throughout the day without having to stop, being able to swap those WB37 batteries with the Smart Controller Enterprise. Max takeoff weight of the drone increased to 5.95 pounds compared to its predecessor. Triple gimbal support, certainly check the user manual for any specifications on which gimbals can be put on the drone together and in which configurations. You see the L1 and P1 there have been recently announced, and those will be available here in 2021. Diving into the Zenmuse H20 Series, the new payload a little bit more. You can see it has 12 megapixel wide camera, a laser rangefinder with 1200 meter max range, a radiometric thermal camera, and a 20 megapixel zoom camera. That's when we're talking about the H20T. The H20, same features minus the thermal camera. That thermal camera, 640 by 512, 30 hertz. And then when we're talking about our zoom camera, it has 20 megapixels plus 23 time hybrid optical zoom with a 200 time max zoom when we bring digital zoom into play there. So on the right side, you can see ability to quickly switch between these different views on the controller, but we have wide, IR with up to 8 times zoom, and then we have the zoom camera as well. You can see what's really nice on the wide camera, that green rectangle is actually showing exactly what the zoom camera is looking at when you switch on over. And then laser rangefinder information as well, the distance from the drone, that's whatever the laser rangefinder is focused on, the absolute altitude, and also a GPS location, so able to take the location of the drone, calculate the distance that the laser rangefinder is detecting from the drone to whatever it's focused on, and then calculate a GPS location for that object or perhaps component that the laser rangefinder is focused on. And you can find that in the metadata of the photos as well. Take a screenshot or even copy the data live when completing an inspection or flight. So just showing you a quick video here, just how easy it is to switch between the 3 views here. You can just tap the respective camera on the left side of the H20T and easily switch between the 3 views. Talking about safety and reliability here, touched on it briefly earlier, but the 6 directional sensing and positioning. So we have our visual and TOF sensors on all 6 sides of the aircraft, up to 131-foot max detection range. Customizable aircraft sensing behavior, which is really nice. So we can take this down into a granular fashion and set it to a certain amount of feet for the horizontal system, the downward system, and the upward system. Top and bottom auxiliary lights. So we talked about the Mavic 2 Enterprise series before that has a light on the bottom. This is bottom and top. And then also anti-collision beacons built in, which are FAA compliant, able to see those at 3 statute miles if you're working at night or need to file for a daylight waiver at this time. IP rating, IP45 for the aircraft, IP44 for the H20 series. You can see the definitions there. Drone can withstand 100 millimeters per 24 hours of rain based on tests conducted in a laboratory environment. Has an external airflow design and ESCs are located in the body. There's actually a metal plate on the inside top portion of the aircraft. So heat dissipates up to this metal plate, and then airflow goes through the top of the drone and dissipates this heat. So really a great engineering design there to keep the internal components safe inside and also successfully dissipate that heat. UAV health management system, able to monitor health status of components, see flight data, flight logs, manage firmware, air records, and troubleshooting guidelines. So after a flight has happened, if you saw an error message popped up, you go into the health management system after the fact and check those error records or notifications that you saw and see exactly what that notification was and if you need to take further action. Flight log management allows you to quickly upload any flight logs you would like to the cloud to be backed up. If you'd like to use that option, flight data management can see the total flight time of your aircraft, and then health status monitoring different components can easily see that they are good to go. Redundant systems here, dual IMU, barometer, compass, RTK antenna, and GNS modules. Advanced dual control, so either operator can take control of the aircraft with a single tap. Dual batteries, so in the case that one battery fails, the drone can still return home safely. 3-propeller emergency landing allows you to maintain control of the aircraft in the case of a motor malfunction. Would encourage you to take a look at the white paper on the download section of our Matrice 300RTK webpage if you'd like to read about this more in depth. But you can see in this simulation, one motor is cut and the drone puts itself into a spin, allowing the operator to control the drone by using cardinal directions. And then as the drone approaches the ground, they can cut the motors at the very end. So it allows you to navigate the drone to a better location for an emergency landing. Once again, very low probability something like this occurring, but it's a great system to have in place in case that emergency occurs. The drone also has an extra wide FPV camera to help maintain situational awareness. For some reason, payload was not functioning properly. Has ADS-B receiver as well with a 12.43 mile range. So ultimately, with any aircraft in the area that have an ADS-B out, you'll be able to see that information on the screen within DJI Pilot. The aircraft, just for clarity's sake, does not have ADS-B out, so it will not be broadcasting its location to these aircraft. But anything that does have an ADS-B out, the drone's ADS-B in will be able to pick that up and give you any warnings of aircraft nearby within the Pilot app. Advanced intelligence here, first off talking about the primary flight display, which takes a cue from manned aviation. You can see, as we'll play the video here, going through the pylons, one of the things you'll notice there in the navigation display is those yellow bars that pop up. And that's based on the collision avoidance, obstacle avoidance settings that we talked about earlier that you can customize in the Pilot app. So in that case, yellow set at a warning distance, so the aircraft isn't going to stop, continues through the pylons. And then also Moving at the top here, you can see flight path vector. So that line going forward is if current control inputs are kept steady, that's where the drone is going to end up. We see horizon here, so current level of the drone, probably easiest way to put that. Horizontal speed, wind speed and direction, can change these to imperial units as well. Wind speed and direction is in relation to the drone itself, so right now the wind is blowing from behind the drone. Drone does have to be in the air to get that measurement because it's calculating it based off of the correction it has to make in the air. Vertical obstacle indicator, so you can see at 22 and at 14 feet, there are obstacles. You can also see a return to home altitude set in that vertical obstacle indicator as well. Altitude, vertical speed, and absolute altitude are all there as well. And as we talked about on the bottom center there, you can see the navigation horizontal obstacle map. So just playing this one more time, give you a chance to see, once again, some of these metrics moving as the drone works its way through the pylons. And you'll see, a lot of these items look very similar from what we covered with the Pilot app and the Mavic 2 Enterprise series and some past videos. We still have our remaining flight time, smart return to home. We have our flight mode, air sense, etc. Diving a little bit more into that advanced dual control, there's really a new frontier here on the enterprise drone side where either controller is able to take control of the aircraft. So you need to bind both RC to the aircraft before taking flight. But in a sense, if you were flying from one side of a bridge to another, both RC don't necessarily need to be connected to the aircraft when it takes off, just binded so they are on the same page is probably the easiest way to put it. But basically that data packet being sent from the RC to the drone is led with a code, a certain number, where the drone knows what's RC it's talking to. So ultimately we bind them beforehand. The drone knows the RC that it's talking to. And then during flight, we are then able to work between multiple RC. That's not to say both your RC won't be connected to the drone most of the time when taking off. It's just a potential use case here. We'd be flying from one location to another. That is an option. Obviously, on scene, you could use a typical one person operating the drone, one person operating the gimbal. You could have one person kind of at the front line flying the drone, and maybe one person back with the HDMI for streaming. Training-wise, can take over the drone with just a touch on the screen. So that's useful as well. Can stop the drone in its tracks. And then also, if you don't want the second remote controller taking control of the aircraft, you can go ahead and tap and hold on the aircraft control within the application, which we'll go over when we get into the app a little bit more. And then the second controller is not able to take control in that situation. Smart pin and track. These are intelligent functions to help out during operations, really enabled by the laser rangefinder of the H20. So just going over PinPoint here first. But with the laser rangefinder, we're able to place a pin you can see on the map. And then you can view the pinpoint on your display, its distance away from the drone. You can open up the map as well and see the exact coordinates of the pin. And then with our latest update, with the click of the button, you can even focus the camera exactly where you place the pin. So once again, we'll jump into this feature a little bit more in depth, but just think of the pin as an exact GPS location that you're able to place. It shows up as this green diamond on the map. So useful to mark a location. One example, for example, we're working in hazmat space, arrived at an incident, see something, maybe a person in distress, we'd be able to mark a pin there, and then could continue flying around the scene, and then can bring the camera back with just a click of the button to that pin location. I have a GPS location to share with others as well. And then also has easy reference on the screen as well with that green diamond to see exactly where it is at and how far away it is from the drone. You can also see it on that navigation display as well. I'll rotate around so we can see it's directly in front of the drone right now. And you can see the yellow polygon indicating our gimbal is pointed straight forward as well. So that's why we're able to see the pin in the view. And we'll jump into that navigation display in more depth later on. Smart Track here, you can see these yellow circles on the car. The gimbal is automatically able to detect and follow defined objects such as vehicles, people, and boats. And then by tapping on one of the yellow circles, the smart tracking will start. This is useful because once again, after the smart tracking has started, the pilot doesn't have to do any work, doesn't have to move the gimbal, doesn't have to focus the camera. It's auto zooming, it's keeping the subject centered. You can see the drone is able to yaw to the left, but it's not going to be flying itself. But with this zoom capability, it's able to track the subject in real time at a high resolution, and then can also see the subject position displayed on the map in real time, or with the laser rangefinder turned on, can also see the GPS location as well if useful. On the smart inspection side, we have Waypoint 2.0, live mission recording, and AI spot check, which all build on top of each other. Waypoint 2.0 supports up to 65,535 waypoints for a mission, so certainly increased from the previous 99 waypoints. Supports bank turns, more dynamic flight routes. POI is supported, so if you have a certain object of interest, you can have the camera focused on that object during the waypoint mission. Supports multiple payloads, offers multiple consecutive actions at a waypoint, and also supports third-party payloads like PSDK, Mobile SDK, and OSDK support for Waypoint 2.0. Live mission recording allows you to log your flight as you're completing a mission. So basically, if you take a photo, it's going to document that in our live mission recording, that at that specific GPS point with the camera at that certain pitch and pan and zoom level, the action is to take a photo. So then if you'd like to repeat that photo at a later time, the drone is able to fly back to that specific waypoint and the action is logged. So when completing a live mission recording, can be very useful because you can complete an inspection as you normally would. You might need to add a couple waypoints yourself just to direct the drone how you'd want it specifically to fly to a location. But once it's there and you're taking photos, it's going to document that to be able to go back and do the same thing autonomously the next time for a repeated mission. And then building on that, you're able to annotate those photos that you've taken during the live mission recording. So then the gimbal will automatically search for the object of interest to help deliver more accurate and consistent results. So these three really build on top of each other where we have our waypoints. We can record these waypoints and actions live during a manual flight mission. And then we're able to build on top of that with AI spot check to include our accuracy. And when I say manual flight mission with live mission recording, it's actually within mission flight within the aircraft, but you can fly the aircraft manually that first time to kind of teach it, show it what you'd like the inspection to be done, and then all that information is logged to be repeated by the system the next time. So we'll have a whole video on these three features, diving in and showing you how this looks in the Pilot app for more information. High-res grid photo allows you to capture a set of high-resolution photos with one click. So this is within manual flight. In the menu, there's a photo mode called high-res grid. So you can see it captures one wide photo. And then within that wide photo, each of the grid cells is a zoom photo. So this is really great for reference when we're completing an inspection, so you can see exactly where the photo is compared to the wider view. And then you have the high resolution zoomed in photos to look at those granular details that you aren't able to necessarily tell from the wider photo. Once again, we'll hop into this a bit more in a later video, but just giving you the overview of the feature, a real great addition with the H20 series. Extensibility and openness continued the ability to use both the mobile onboard and payload SDK, as SDK global adoption continues to scale up with over 70,000 registered SDK developers, 20,000 active SDK developers, and over 1,000 plus published mobile SDK apps. Circling back on the specs here, max takeoff weight of just under 20 pounds, max flight time of 55 minutes, max speed just under 52 miles an hour. Payloads, H20 series, the Z30, the XT2, and the upcoming P1 and L1. Ingress protection is IP45 for the aircraft. Operating temperature between -4 and 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry about that. And then you can see once again we have our aircraft, battery station, smart controller, and the TB60 intelligent flight batteries. Just talking about a couple applications here. Quick case today was a Foshan wildfire. Fire outbreak occurred in a mountainous region, which covered an area of more than 500 acres. 42 teams were deployed on site, which include local firefighting teams and additional support provided by the DJI Enterprise team. At first, the team utilized the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, which allowed for a quick, rapid assessment. So the Mavic 2 Enterprise certainly still has a place in the fleet as a drone that's able to be quickly deployed. But then after that, just doesn't take very long to set up the Matrice 300RTK, but it is take a little bit longer than the very small Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual in comparison. Was launched, and that real-time imagery was being able to share it across operators, ground team, excuse me, and even streamed to others back at Incident Command to really help with decisions, show fire lines, hot spots the next day. And that's really one of the expanded capabilities of the Matrice 300 RTK. We have night scene ability with the zoom camera with an IR cut. We have the higher resolution thermal camera at 640 by 512, and then also the location ability with PinPoint and the laser rangefinder. On the energy side, Valmont Utilities is an authority on the inspection of power line structures. They started their program in 2018 after running trials with the preceding Matrice 200 series. Now moving on to the Matrice 300 RTK and H20, ultimately they found it to be more efficient and help them complete work in a shorter amount of time. With the max 55-minute flight time and hot swappable batteries, it's been reducing their time. So if they're going along multiple transmission towers, they don't necessarily have to land the drone as much because of the longer flight time and also the time savings the H20 series offers. Previously, they needed to use the X5S with the Matrice 200 series to get the high resolution imagery for an inspector back at the office to look at. But now with the 23-time hybrid optical zoom and 20 megapixel camera, that combination really helps them to optimize the inspection side of things because they don't necessarily need to fly as close and can quickly move the camera from component to component. So you can see a quote there from Jake Lehman, Quality and UAS Manager at Valmont Utility. He talked about how the system and payload has increased their efficiency by at least 30%. With the Matrice 300 RTK, Enterprise Shield is also an option there. You can learn more about that on our website. And then we offer DJI maintenance service as well, which is recommended at 6, 12, and 18 months or every 200 hours. And with this, you're able to see records of the maintenance service online, and then also make sure critical components are being inspected and replaced in a proper timeline. Thanks for tuning in. I'm looking forward to diving into these various features in upcoming videos.